Hello, welcome back to Planet 4 Decay. Today's video, voted on by our patrons, is the Biologus Putrifier from the Deathguard Codex. So coming in within the elite options of the book will cost you 4 power or 65 points for the model. He comes with the Play Company keyword, is a character, a Biologus Putrifier model, a Fetid Variant and an infantry unit. So a Play Company is a mini faction within the Deathguard Codex that grants access to a wall or trait, a relic and a stratagem. Then the Biologus Putrifier keyword will interact with stratagems and buffs. Then the Fetid Variant is the final one that we need to mention, and it's got his own rule on page 40 of the Codex, which states that you can take up to 3 completely different elite units with this keyword, and it will take up only 1 battlefield slot within the detachment. Then of course he's an infantry model, so he can be jumping into cover and whatnot. So stat wise, his movement 5-inch, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 4, toughness 5, wounds 4, attacks 4, leadership 8 and a 3+ save. So the stats there are the same as the other Fetid Variant models within this section of the book. So moving into his box of tricks then, the abilities. Disgustingly Resilient, which is each time an attack is allocated to the model, you can subtract 1 from the damage characteristic from the attack to a minimum of 1. So it's very handy. Then he's got the Contagions of Nurgle, which is an aura put out which increases as the game progresses. So in battle round 1 it's only 1 inch around all of your units, and it grows up to a 9-inch radius by turn 4 onwards, and this inflicts a -1 to your opponent's toughnesses while they're within that range. Next he's got another, which is an aura called Blight Racks. So while a friendly Biologus Putrifier unit is within 6 inches of the model, Blight Grenade models in that unit are equipped with an armor penetration characteristic of -1 and the damage is 2. So all of your characters hold Blight Grenades, and of course your Plague Marines as well. Unfortunately not the Terminators. Putrid Explosion is next, which is if the model is destroyed, roll 1d6 before removing it from play, and on a 4+ it will explode, and each unit excluding Nurgle units within 6 inches suffer a mortal wound. So a mini explosion-like vehicle, probably all of his Blight Grenades on his back going off. Then finally, Foul Infusion, which is once per turn at the start of either the charge phase or the fight phase. You select 1 friendly Play Company core unit within 6 inches of this model, then until the start of your next command phase. Each time a model in that unit makes a melee attack with a plague weapon, an unmodified wound roll of a 6 will inflict 1 mortal wound on the target, in addition to any normal damage. So this can be activated in either the start of the charge phase or the fight phase. Now having the option is good, as pylons may drift you out of range or maybe bring you within range once in the fight phase. So that's a nice perk, having the option. And a lot of melee weapons in the Codex are plague weapons that reroll 1s to wound, so the more attacks you have, the more likely you're going to get 6s. So that's the abilities on the data sheet. Next we need to discuss his weapon loadout. So the Biologus Putrifier is equipped with an injector pistol, a plague knife, hyper blight grenades and crack grenades. So for the injector pistol, it's range 3-inch, pistol 1, strength 4, -1 AP and 1 damage. It is a plague weapon, so you're rerolling 1s to wound, and each time an attack is made with this weapon against an infantry, a cavalry or a beast unit, it will inflict D3 mortal wounds in addition to the normal damage. That's only when you wound the target. So as it's a pistol, it can be shot in combat if needed, and against infantry, cavalry or beast, you're doing a D3 on top of the damage, so it's quite a nice little perk for that. You still need to hit on 3s and likely wound on 4s or even 5s, but at least you're rerolling 1s as it's a plague weapon. Plague knife then, that says melee weapon, it's strength user, making it strength 4, -1 AP, 1 damage. Again, it's a plague weapon, so you're getting the rerolls of 1. -1 AP is helpful. Now he has 4 attacks base and hits on 3s, so not likely doing masses of work here. You will be relegating your opponent's toughnesses down with the Contagions of Nurgle, so you could actually be wounded on 3s rerolling 1s. Now this weapon can actually be upgraded, which we'll talk about later in the video. Moving into his grenades, he's got Hyper Blight Grenades. So it's a 6-inch range, grenade D6, strength 4, -1 AP and 2 damage. It's got the blast keyword and it's a plague weapon. So this isn't a bad grenade actually, it's -1 AP, 2 damage and of course has blast. So if you target say a Primaris Marine unit and had say 3 attacks with it, on average you're going to hit twice and wound once. Then that -1 AP brings the save to a 4+ save, so it's a 50-50 on whether that Marine lives or dies, because it's damage 2. So I'd hope this could remove a model off the board when using it. Now the larger 11+ model units should suffer 2 deaths within the unit when you're using this. And then of course the crack grenades, which we may as well go over as it doesn't have much range apart from that pistol. So crack grenades are 6-inch range, grenade 1, strength 6, -1 AP and the damage is D3. So it's not a plague weapon of course, but it can hurt tougher models. The D3 damage is a bit unpredictable, but averages 2 damage, so you only really need to select that grenade type if you're not throwing it at a toughness 4 unit. If it's toughness 3, then it's going to wound on 2s, although it's probably overkill, and then toughness 5 you're wounded on 3s. But overall with his weapons, in terms of damage output, is not doing much. Right, moving away from the lack of damage he produces, I wanted to quickly touch on one of the plague companies. Now, the ferrymen have a stratagem with the fetid variant models to increase all auras by 6 inches. This will give his Blight Rack's ability a 12-inch radius rather than a 6-inch, which will cost you only 1 CP. As for the more generic stratagems, you've got Diseased Effluence for 1 CP done in the fight phase, and while the unit is in combat, your model suffers 1 mortal wound, then on a 2+, the enemy unit will suffer 2d3 mortal wounds, or just d3 if it's a character, so a solid trade-off. Release the Toxins for 2 CP used on any character with a relic, and we will go over the relics in a moment, but for this stratagem you roll 1d6 for each enemy unit within 7 inches, and on a roll of a 2, 3, 4 or a 5, they're going to suffer 1 mortal wound. On a 6, it's d3 mortal wounds. Now this can only be used once per model per battle. Eruption of Filth for 1 CP, used when your model has been destroyed and has triggered his Putrid Explosion ability. You roll 1d6 for each unit within 3 inches, excluding Nurgle units, and on a 2, 3, 4 or a 5, they're suffering a mortal wound. And on a 6, it's d3. So this prevents you from needing to roll a 4+ to explode, and also has the chance of d3 mortal wounds if you roll 6s. So it can be key if you're surrounded by enemy units. Gifts of Decay for 1 CP is your Deathguard method of getting more relics in the army. Then likewise for 1 CP, Plague Chosen is the method to get an extra Warlord trait in the army. The Blightening for 1 CP, which is kind of cool. You select 3 Deathguard models with Blight Grenades. Now all the grenades that you select will lose the Blast keyword but will gain Pistol 6. And if firing it within engagement range, then it's auto hitting. Now combine this with his Blight Rack Aura, this can get nasty as 6 shots that auto hit, that are strength 4 but reroll 1s and a -1 AP and 2 damage each. Not to mention the contagion ability dropping the toughness for your enemy models. Against horde units such as Orc Boys, just one of these grenades is probably killing 4 models. And bear in mind you're going to put the Blightening on 3 separate models, not 1. Now moving ahead in the book, I'm going to skip the Warlord traits as it's very unlikely you selected him as your Warlord. Good luck if you are. The Plague Skull of Glothilla. Bit of a tongue twist. It's a once per battle relic. It doesn't replace any weapons. You select an enemy unit within 6 inches and you roll 7 dice. Any 4s or 5s will stick a mortal wound on the unit and any 6s are d3. Now you should be getting 4 or 5 wounds from this, and it can be used on characters as there's no Lookout Sir rule because it's not the shooting phase. So if you're playing against say Marines for example, throw the dice at a Librarian or a Chaplain or even an Apothecary just to remove the extra buffs from the game. Figurus Helm, which extends his aura by 3 inches, so his Blight Racks are going to now be at 9-inch range. Then the go-to relic for the model is probably the Plague Bringer, which replaces his Plague Knife. And it's strength 6, -3 AP and 2 damage, and of course is a plague weapon for the rerolls of 1. And any slain models count as double for the purposes of morale. Now bear in mind, one of the army-wide abilities here is the Contagions of Nurgle, making enemy units lose 1 toughness. So standard toughness 4 models will drop to toughness 3. And when you've got a strength 6 weapon, you're wounded on 2s. And of course it being a plague weapon, you're rerolling those 1s. Now it does only have 4 attacks, as the relics come quite easy with the Deathguard due to the 2 different stratagems to get relics. He can be a nice little countercharge unit. Now he probably will only kill 2 Marines in a single fight phase, but that's still a good 40 to 60 points off the board. Now bear in mind the character only costs you 65, so it could be a cheeky little investment. So tactically speaking, the way I'd use this model, he needs to hover behind a character and a set of Plague Marines to have any real effect, as the main trick is buffing all of the Blight Grenades and of course making the most out of the Blightening stratagem, so that 3 models with Blight Grenades can all have 6 attacks each at -1 AP and 2 damage. So you could opt to select the Biologus Putrifier as the first one, a unit of Plague Marines as the second, and then maybe a Plague Surgeon as the third. Now this turns the D6 grenade profile into pistol 6 profile, meaning you've got 18 attacks to play with, and all at -1 AP 2 damage, rerolling 1s to wound. Again, factor in that -1 to their toughness because of your contagion ability. With 18 attacks, you're going to hit on average 12 of them and be wounding toughness 4 models, which are now toughness 3, on 3s, giving around 9 or 10 wounds. Marines will be put down to a 4+ armor save, so 4 or 5 should die just from that attack alone. Against hordes like Orc Boys, it's going to be killing around 9. Now if you are in engagement range with all 3 of the models, then you're going to auto hit, so this will now cause around 14 wounds and kill 7 Primaris Marines or 14 Orc Boys, so pretty powerful. Then don't forget that he's got another ability, Foul Infusion, which will add another mortal wound for each 6 you roll to wound. So now you only use this on 1 unit, which will be your Plague Marines as their core. In fact, we shouldn't underestimate the power of that ability, as your Plague Marines carry all the Plague Knives and a host of other Plague melee weapons, and you can expect a lot of 6s being rolled to wound, causing a lot of mortal wounds if your Biologus Putrifier is behind them. So to conclude with the unit, Apart from the little combination that we just mentioned, which does require other units to assist him with the lightning stratagem, other than that he's not got much else going on. He doesn't do much with his pistol or his plague knife. Now the plague bringer relic can assist him, but realistically you're probably not going to go for it, as he's only got 4 attacks and other units can do that sort of work. End of the day, he is a support character, nothing more. He is fairly cheap though, and if you're able to pull that blight grenade trick off, then you're easily going to get your points back. And the trick is quite flexible. You don't have to have a plague surgeon. It could be a talisman and a noxious blight bringer, for example, or any other of the elite characters or HQs really. Now I've picked the plague surgeon as he's got the weakest ranged weapon, so it makes more sense. It's a shame that this codex has lost a stratagem to allow a whole unit of plague marines to throw a blight grenade, which was the reason why I used to bring him, because he obviously beefed up those blight grenades to make them hyper blight grenades. But with his new foul infusion ability, it keeps him as a semi-decent supporting character behind your plague marines. As for his rating, I'm going to be giving the Biologus Putrifier a Planetfall Decay rating of 3 out of 5. A solid offensive support character, but doesn't do much else. It's nice that he's so cheap, and he should be scoring his points back if you use him correctly. That's my thoughts. Let me know yours below. Also remember to get involved with our polls on our Patreon service, which determines the videos we do next. Drop a like on the way out, and thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.